Well, good sunny Michigan afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How was lunch? Yeah? Nobody brought me food, so thanks, but we'll live with it. I don't have to say it, but yeah, I welcome food, but that's all good. I passed out a lot of things. As I was jokingly saying, there weren't any more trees to copy on, so I had to stop. But what I'm going to do today is I just found as many things as I could resource-wise. I'm just going to kind of give you those things. That really thick packet I just passed out that says not light but fire, just pretend that I don't know you have that for copyright reasons. But we're going to be working with that today and then the next time we meet, which is that February? Yeah, okay. So we're going to kind of break that in half, but that's kind of alluded to it last time. There was this book I found that talked about strategies for creating a safe classroom. So we're going to dig into that a little bit today. So that's that there. Just quick review on things. Let's see if my pointer is going to work. Yes. Our purpose, we talked about last time, the power of why. We watched that video, which some of you had seen before, about when you know your why, how much more purposeful your work is. So we're going to continue to look at the collaborative learning environment and how we improve student inclusion and engagement in building that safe environment. Apparently only works in that one spot. There it goes. Our inclusion activity today is what was your first job? So at your table groups in round robin style, each person is going to reveal what his or her first paid job was. This is one of my favorite things to learn about people. And then I also want you to talk about what are the possible relationships between your first paid job and your current work. Okay, and see some of the looks on your faces like, oh, wait until I tell you what I did. So I'm enjoying this. So go ahead, share. Hopefully you've got a chance to share. By the way, I forgot to remind you guys, my name is Gerry. I also answer to Mr. Verwey, Coach, or Hey You. So any of those apply. My first paid job was working at a greenhouse deadheading geraniums. It was awesome fun. But I would think the connection that I learned with my current job was just the persistence piece of sticking at it and working hard. And so I felt like despite the time when I was in middle school and I hated it, I found value later on that I learned work ethic for that. So can I get maybe 4 volunteers to share what their first paid job was and how it might apply? I'll take 1, 2, 3, and 4. Thank you.
We didn't know if we should count this one, but I did. Babysitting.
Okay.
I did a ton of babysitting from 12 till 16 or so.
Okay.
Connection with the current job is sometimes I think I'm still doing that. Except for I don't have to do diapers.
You hope not.
At least, yeah.
What grade level are you again?
High school.
Okay, yeah, you really hope not.
Hope
Yeah. Good. Excellent. 12 to 16, you must have been semi-successful at that then.
Pretty much every weekend, or every weekend, night, and
cool. All right. Who was second? Yeah.
I worked at a high ropes course and did team building activities and stuff. School.
Fantastic. And what was your connection with your current work?
I was working with kids, teaching team building and collaboration.
Sure. All those big group work skills and all that. Cool. How'd you get that job?
I lived at the camp where it was run.
Okay. So literally walk out the door. Yeah. Nice. Who was my third volunteer?
I went to McDonald's in high school. How it relates to my current job is McDonald's has a corporate office filled with people who don't really have a connection with what's actually happening at a McDonald's every day, and they make the decisions for you, and you have to do them whether you agree or not.
I don't get it. And 4 was over here somewhere. Yes.
So I did TAing and tutoring.
Okay. Obvious connection there. Yeah. Did anybody have like a really unique job that hasn't shared? Every now and then you get a group that just had someone that had this strange job, like they were a dentist for some strange animal or something like that. Nothing weird, huh?
I had this wasn't my first job, but I was a nighttime water at a golf course, so they didn't have a built-in watering system. So like I literally had to go around every hour, and I had to like put put the sprinkler in and twist it, and that would start it.
Okay.
And then I did that in every single hole. And then an hour later, I'd go and start it again and move it a little bit further down
Wow.
the green and so on and so on.
I can't imagine a lot of people had that job.
Yeah, I didn't mind it.
Interesting. Okay.
Got to shoot raccoons at night too.
I am a water/raccoon shooter at night in golf courses. That's an interesting one on the resume. So, all right. Anybody else? I think my most interesting job was actually I was a park ranger for 13 years. It started in college, and I worked for Ottawa County, and my primary responsibility were the beaches that were managed by Ottawa County. Most people are familiar with Tunnel Park in Holland. Was one of my responsibilities. Up to Kirk Park near Grand Haven, Rosie Mound, natural area in Grand Haven, up to North Shore Beach in Ferrysburg there, and all kinds of stories from that. Mostly good, but you'd see the good of people and the bad side of people in that job. A lot of it was rule enforcement related, but most unique moment was we had a drowning one year at one of our beaches, and just to see the moment when people can come together and help out for a good cause, just knowing that there's that capacity with humans to do that. You know, when you have those moments in the classroom, you're feeling alone, and you kind of reflect back on even a tragic moment where you've seen that come together. So, yeah, that was a unique job. Didn't get to shoot the raccoons, but I got to look at them. So they would launch out the trash cans at you and scare the crap out of you. Anyway, we're going to move on. Our outcomes are the same as they've been before. Again, earlier this year, we created that ideal classroom vision. We'll reflect on that in a moment. You're working on putting together an implementation plan for how you can apply some strategies to create a collaborative and safe environment in your classroom. There she is in all of her beauty. As a community, we believe in building a safe and collaborative learning environment where all members actively participate in productive, authentic discourse around meaningful tasks. And we've talked about how it's easy to say these things. It's yet another thing to actually apply them and to do them. And we've held ourselves accountable to that too, where we value participating in a productive, authentic way. And sometimes, especially in a professional learning setting, we sometimes want to kind of stay in our own corner and maybe not put ourselves outside of our comfort zone. So again, I remind you that I would love to see you push yourself today beyond that. We focused a little bit last time on the collaborative side with the norms of collaboration. On our agenda today, we'll come back briefly to that to start off with. But I really want to dig more into this, how do you make that safe environment piece, and just some ideas for that. And one of these resources, that book I don't know you have, will help with that. But I'm sure you guys might have some ideas too that you could share with the group. So that's our agenda. It's beautiful because it's in green, which is an awesome color. The big thing is I want to make sure we have time today to actually do the survey at the end. So I'm going to try to actually, don't tell Rusty, but get done early if possible, so you have time to do the survey, your implementation guide, and the reflection at the end. So first thing is the 7 norms of collaboration. We talked about this last time. Pausing, paraphrasing, posing questions, putting ideas on the table, providing data, paying attention to self and others, and presuming positive intentions. And I believe a lot of you are going to take at least one of these back into your setting and try to apply them in some way. So I'm really curious if you had any successes or takeaways, or where you feel you are at with that right now. One of the things I passed out, in fact, I think it was the first thing I passed out to those who were here at the very beginning. Those of you who came in later, I ran out of copies of it, so just pretend you have this one. Was that kind of survey or inventory of the norms of collaboration. If I can borrow one here real quick, thank you.
Yep.
It has the rowers on the top corner on one side, so if you don't have this, just pretend you do for a second. But really all this is, thank you, is just a chance to either, this one's actually meant to be for within a group, to kind of do a group inventory, but you can use it as sort of a self-reflective thing too. Where do you think you are at on the application of norms of collaboration? Do you feel like you've grown any since we talked about them last time in this area? And maybe you don't feel like you've grown in that, or you didn't get a chance to apply them, and that's okay. I mean, I'm not offended. But where are you now, and where might you want to be with these sorts of things? So for those of you who have a copy of that, you're welcome to kind of gauge yourself on that. For the rest of you, I'll get you a copy before you leave here today. So Was there anybody that was able to try to apply at least one of the norms of collaboration in their classroom? Carolyn, did you have any successes or takeaways from that, whether they're good or bad?
Well, I was like, oh, I want to work on paraphrasing, and then I just became more conscious of it, and it turned out that I was already doing it a lot, and I didn't realize it. So now it was just more of an awareness thing, because all the time kids say stuff to me, and I like parrot it back to them, and that's just become a habit. And so now I'm just trying to refine that more into how I paraphrase. And so from here I was like, okay, well, I feel okay about me doing that, so I'm going to try to transfer that onto them. So I'm going to work on them paraphrasing me. And we're starting with, like, I issued directions, or I did the focus lesson. What was that focus lesson about that I just said? And I'm going to try to paraphrase that to me, and then move from there, try to get them to paraphrase with each other, because I'm doing it, but no one else is doing it.
So there was a lot there. First of all, you kind of had an aha moment of, this isn't necessarily new to you. It was just kind of being aware of it. Do you think there's value in being aware?
Yeah, because then you're more intentional about the words that you're using when you're paraphrasing, rather than just kind of repeating. So using some kind of, and not saying, so I heard to them, like saying, so you're saying, so you said, to make it more about them than it is about my interpretation of it. Was part of it, and then just kind of maybe adding some of the, like, trying to change the wording more than saying, like, almost word for word back to them what they were saying. But I was like, oh, the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, I kind of do that a lot. Kids say stuff, and I usually try to respond by, like, repeating that back in some form.
Yeah.
And then I was like, once I became more aware of myself doing it, I was like, I don't have anybody in my classroom doing this stuff, so I'm not teaching it. I'm doing it, but they're not doing it.
Sure. You may be modeling it, but they're not aware of what you're modeling because it just isn't pointed out to them. And just to the whole group, and I obviously know the answer to this, is there value in the students knowing what you're trying to do with that? What is the value for a student? Yeah.
I guess in terms of them paraphrasing each other, I think, so if you start talking about paraphrasing and you're telling them that's something important for them to do, I think they learn to listen to each other and realize that everyone in class has something valid to say.
Yeah, I agree. Is there anything you want to add over here? I saw a hand.
No.
Same thing?
Good, yep.
What I like about, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, notice, I've been trying to do that as well, paraphrasing, and put sentence starters up. Just kind of posted them on the front of the board so the kids could see them. And I've been trying to get them to paraphrase each other. The hard part is to have it come naturally.
Yeah.
We're really good at it if I say, I need someone to paraphrase, let's try using these sentence starters. But when it comes out like, let's just do this as class talk, it's a little bit harder. But what I've noticed is, like, those kids who are not always on task, the kids who are doing different things, when they start paraphrasing each other, they become more engaged in what's going on in the classroom. And the things that they're missing, they're not missing as much.
Sure. It seemed like last time the paraphrasing one was what most of us were excited about, at least most excited about. Not that there's not value in the other things, especially obviously pausing, because we're all trained in wait time and all that. But you all seemed as a group excited about paraphrasing. And to your point, I was thinking about, I coach track, and I have a girl that wants to learn to do triple jump. And I took her to Grand Valley's track last night, and she's trying to get the skip down. I don't know if you're familiar with triple jump, but it's like a hop, skip, and a jump type deal. And it's jump off this foot, but then you got to land back on this foot, and then jump off the other foot. And she just couldn't get that down. It just wasn't natural. Like, the paraphrasing isn't natural. But what is it going to take for her to master the triple jump? It's just practice, practice, practice. It's the repetition, and it's the growing from the experience. Just like the paraphrasing. I told you guys that for my students it was a joke for a while, but then it just kind of became habit. And I'm sure it'll be the same with your students. Eventually it's going to pick up and happen.
I think students also find value when you explain to them that this isn't just a skill for this particular math class, but for all of life.
Yeah.
And I feel that my students respond well when I'm like, okay, well later on, if you're trying to make a point to somebody, you're trying to make an argument, you have to like understand what they're saying, and like this is kind of how you can like deal with people in the real world. And I think there's something wrong with that.
Absolutely, and I use it myself in the real world a lot. The other thing I like about paraphrasing, actually all of these, but paraphrasing is, I talked about last time being a strategy for collaboration, but it isn't also building that safe environment, right? Because like Carolyn, you're talking about, you're trying not to just regurgitate the same thing back. You're trying to show you're actively digesting what they told you and rephrasing it to make sure you're understanding them correctly. And you know when you nail a paraphrase back to a student because they just light up and they're like, yes, or exactly. Or if you don't, they're like, well, no, that's not really what I mean, or they'll try to re-explain it. But just that knowledge that that adult is trying to truly gain what they're trying to tell them, I think creates that trust piece there too. Any other thoughts about paraphrasing in your classrooms, Carolyn?
Two things. I'd like to know what your sentence stems are.
For the paraphrase?
Yeah, what
Oh,
do you
yeah.
think?
I can share them with you. There are like 20 of them, and I just rotate through them.
You have the
So
one,
they're
like,
from-
want me to give an email?
Yeah.
Okay.
You could maybe put them in the Google Classroom too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Then everybody can get them. Yeah.
Aaron, will you do that for Rob, please?
It's good that you got a team, right?
That's right.
Hence the meeting beforehand. Now I know why.
Exactly.
Yeah, that'd be great, because that's what we want to do. We want to share these strategies with each other for sure. So.
Which did they come from? They actually came from.
That it really shows somebody that you're listening and something that you're respecting. So I have a coworker who's gone through a lot of after school training, and then this became this big initiative of most have done it after school. And they paraphrasing is really big in our building. And she's like, I'm so used to it now, so used to doing it at work, that when I'm like outside of school having conversations with people and they don't paraphrase me, I don't think they're listening to me.
Yeah.
So it's become like this habit where, and I think when you say that back to somebody, it shows that you're paying attention to what they actually said, and it's like it's value and respect for your students as well.
Yeah.
Elevating their status.
So it's helping our classroom, both from the teacher side and the student side. It's helping us probably in our outside lives too. It probably help some of us in our married lives as well. That's what we're talking about over here. How to be husband of the year, right? Or wife of the year. But like with my wife, there's been times where I've paraphrased back to her. She doesn't know I've been through like this cognitive coaching training or anything like that. But just the satisfaction of she knowing that I appreciate what she said, it makes a big difference. So, did anybody try anything else in their classroom yet? Yeah.
I tried pausing, and I know like I try to give wait time a little bit more, but I also try to have a classroom where it's more informal and kids can just say answers and talk and just have a conversation. But I explained to the kids how some of us understand things a little bit quicker than others, and other times kids just need a little bit more time to process. So if someone just, like in class right now we're doing congruent triangles and proving them congruent, but some kids can just look at some triangles and say, oh, that's angle, side, angle. And other kids need to think about it, but if someone's just going to say, oh, they're congruent because of angle, side, angle, then they're just going to shut down and they're going to say, okay, it's angle, side, angle. I don't know, I didn't have time to think about it. So I explained to the kids, we are going to wait, and I'm going to wait for more kids, like maybe to get an answer before I actually call on somebody. We're not going to shove stuff out. And it's worked out really well, because I'm having a lot more kids show that understanding, because it might just be taking them a little bit longer, but they're getting it.
Awesome. I think for some teachers, it's just gaining a little bit of confidence to do that pause, just like with wait time when you ask a question. But I think it's okay to get comfortable with, even in a transition moment, that you maybe you're ready to go, but you still pause and wait, just to let that kind of percolate amongst your kids a little bit and see what pops up from that too. I was just in a virtual meeting this morning with one of my coworkers, and he was going through questions so quickly I didn't have time to process the answer to the last question before he asked the next one. And I thought, I'm a processor. I need that wait time, even myself. So, value. Anything else? Yeah.
I think for putting ideas on the table, I've tried to be more intentional about making sure that every group member contributes instead of just saying work in groups and two of them are doing that. So sometimes you can do that in writing, like everybody has to write in a different color, so you see right away on their solutions like who did what.
Right.
Or like everybody has 2 cards and they have to like use those and like say something. And so just making sure that they value each other, but that everybody's engaged in the learning.
That it's okay to provide some piece to the conversation or the topic and to feel safe doing that. Yeah. And I think we all are excited when our students are putting those ideas on the table, and it's just a matter of reminding the rest of the class that it's the idea you're talking about and not the person sharing it. Still feel valued in that. And I think I wasn't at this morning's session, but I remember last time we met I think it was Andrew in the video with the little kids. He was working through with them. I don't remember if it was a number talk, what he was doing with them, but it was that idea that it was safe to share, it was valued that you shared something, regardless of your level. So, good point. Presuming positive intentions. Anyone thought about that one at all? And the reason I bring it up is I had a coworker who he admittedly struggled with this. And I think it just depended on how much sleep he had, was what he said. But he had those moments where we kind of would joke about it. It was my co-teacher at the time, not Marcus or Rusty, by the way, a different one. And he would say, man, I don't believe in norm number 7 today. But certainly something to be mindful of is that it's always important to try to stay on the positive side of thoughts when it comes to your students and your coworkers as well. Any other thoughts about the norms of collaboration? Trying to pause. So I know some of you put those ideas in your implementation guide, and I would still encourage you to keep trying to push yourself with these norms. Again, the trainings that I would recommend, if you haven't had a chance to do them yet, I know actually Springs people had talked about this earlier, was the adaptive schools training, or even just simply what's called cognitive coaching, where you actually get some training on how to have planning and reflection conversations, and you're utilizing these norms. But there's other things to that, like when Carolyn was talking about paraphrasing her students, something else subtle that you can do to make your students feel safe is just with your body language. So if you have a student sitting with you maybe at your desk and they're kind of leaned back away from you, sometimes doing the same sort of posture back in your chair makes them feel more comfortable instead of kind of being up in their face. So what you would see me do if I was having a conversation with some student, if I saw my student has his arms crossed, I cross my arms too. Or if he's, got his arms down to his side, and I'll do the same thing too. I'm just trying to be kind of as welcoming to what signals that student is giving me as possible. But cognitive coaching training is where I picked up on that. They're called BEMRS. I forget what it stands for, BMRS, but it's essentially body language and picking up on those signals. And there's even subtle things you can learn about when they're thinking, which way they move their eyes as to what type of thinking they're doing. If they're looking up and to the left, it's something else. Up to the right, it's something different. Down is something else completely. So there's lots of little subtle things you can learn through those cognitive coaching and adaptive school sessions. So again, the norms of collaboration comes from adaptive schools. In the past, we've talked about DILT's nested levels of learning, and I just wanted to quickly mention that this culture piece that we've been dealing with certainly involves the capital E environment. It's specifically looking at how culture opens up the door to more rigorous conversations, and it brings us back to why we're here and why we're talking about these topics right now. So, yeah, it may feel uncomfortable, unnatural to work through the norms of collaboration with your kids, but it comes back to why we're here. So you have this document in front of you. It is the other white paper that has lots of words on it. This is some research that backs up the norms of collaboration. It comes from adaptive schools. What I'd love to do is give you maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes to kind of read through that and highlight, underline, circle, smiley face, whatever, any little piece of information that really stands out to you in the article as being valuable or important. So I'm going to pause and give you some time to kind of process that. let's take 2 minutes at your table group and share anything you might have underlined and why you found value in underlining that for good or for bad. Share that with your group mates. What might have been some things that you found interesting in the article that you just read? Who might be willing to share something from that reading and why they found it interesting? And there is no wrong answer. Yeah, thank you.
I underlined when one or two people in a meeting practice the norms, the behavior of other group members become more effective. And I've seen that in my classroom, not only just the paraphrasing and pausing, but just other things that I want them to model. Good behavior, taking notes. And I see a couple, because I've got shoulder partners there at tables, but when I have one person that's doing that, the other person kind of follows along and sees what's successful. Mm-hmm. So it really, it doesn't matter what norm or what characteristic you're trying to get the entire group to do. You've got a few of them that are doing it. A lot of them will follow along because they see that's what's successful.
Right. I can't remember the name of it. Have you seen that video on the YouTubes where it's like one guy starts dancing around crazy in a field, and then a second one comes up and starts dancing like that, and then once the second person comes up, then others feel it's safe to jump in too and start acting ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It was something like it takes two to start a movement or something like that. It's kind of the same thing. It's almost like it's contagious to a certain extent, I'm sure. But there's certainly value in that. And I think it starts to establish that this becomes the expectation in your classroom then, not just the exception. Thank you. What else? Yeah.
Yeah, talking about expectations, there's just commenting on the one line there. As they become established, we've been working substrate. They teach and remind all members, both veterans and new, that this is the way we talk to each other around here, not just the students, but the staff. Would that be something that we all talk to each other?
It'd be a big shift, though, right? Yeah. Especially for those of you in rather large buildings, it might be more tricky to do that, but definitely would change. It would change things revolutionarily. I came from that small environment at Innovation High where we had 12 teachers. But we did that. It became the expectation of our principal. And so we all started doing it as a staff, and then we were doing it with our students, and it just became accepted. So people would come in here and think, who brainwashed you? Whereas we were like, this is just what we do. So, great point. Can I get at least one more? Yeah, thanks again, Caroline.
A couple of us mentioned the same one at the bottom of the left-hand column. A skill is something that someone knows how to do, and a skill becomes a norm when it's a normal behavior in the group. So that this has to become a skill for these kids before it can even become a norm, and for us. That it's not even a skill if you don't know how to do it. So it's not going to become a norm if you haven't figured out how to do it first. So there's kind of more of a process to it. And that kind of went along with what I was thinking about earlier, that I can't expect my kids to paraphrase if I haven't taught them how to do it.
Yeah.
So it's not a skill for them yet.
I think what goes along with that was one of the lines that stood out to me was in the, I think the second to last paragraph on the right-hand column. Any group that is too busy to reflect on process is too busy to improve. And it's okay to explain to your students why you're doing that. And understand that there's value in paraphrasing, there's value in pausing, and this is why we're doing it, and this is why it should become a norm, an expectation, just part of our culture to doing that. So great point. Anything else? Okay. Awesome. Well, again, I keep encouraging you to push yourself out of your comfort zone and try to make these become less of a skill and more of a norm in your class and in your working environment. So I'm going to transition now away from the norms of collaboration, but I still would love us to practice the norms within our own group. And I'm going to direct you to that green piece of paper next. And we're going to actually take some time to start to read that first chapter of that book today. But before we do that, I want to set up some expectations for that. What we're going to look at is on the side that says Group Norming and Discussion Guide. So Group Norming and Discussion Guide first. I think there's, how many of you stay in your same groups for extended periods of time? Which I'm not judging, I'm just asking just to see. Does anybody switch up groups frequently in their classroom? Yeah, sorry, yeah. Yeah. So I didn't explain that very well, yeah. No. In my mind, it made sense. So I would find myself in my classroom, because project-based learning, we were in groups all the time, groups of 4, but I would find myself through a whole project or a whole quarter or whatever, and I would just kind of keep the groups the same. And that was fine. Generally, the groups worked pretty well. But whenever I would think, oh, maybe I should mix up the groups for just this one activity today and then let them go back, have you ever noticed how that changes the dynamic in the class? And I don't know if it's just a different setting or if it's different people or if it's just a wake-up call, kick in the shins or something. But it has value. And so what I would use this for would be in those moments where I'd say, okay, you guys have all been sitting in these groups every time we've met, so I'm going to temporarily mix you up for today, but then when I want you to sit down and almost like creating a new group contract with each other without actually going to that extreme. So what this says is list 5 behaviors that you value during a team meeting. And then you're going to list 5 behaviors that are counterproductive during team meetings. And then you would kind of share those within your group, and you're essentially just setting your own expectations within your little micro community here. So I'd like you to take a moment just to yourself, reflect what are 5 behaviors you value, personally value during your team meetings, and those other things that are counterproductive. None of which, those counterproductive things, I'm sure you never see those at a staff meeting, by the way. Wink, wink. As you're finishing that up, I'd like you to decide in your group whose birthday is closest to Thanksgiving. And that lucky person will get to go first at our next activity, which is painless, I promise. So kind of discuss your group whose birthday is closest to Thanksgiving, and that person will go first in a moment. All right, that person in your group who's closest to being a turkey, all you're going to do is you're going to start off sharing what you find to be productive versus counterproductive. Share those with your group, and then you'll just rotate clockwise around your group so each of you gets a chance to quickly share out your list. Together over here for a moment. Hopefully each of you got a chance to share. If not, you'll get a chance in a moment. So we're going to move in to a little group activity with your reading that I don't know about sitting next to you. But you're going to work in this group that you're sitting with. I'm not going to mix you up for this one today, but what I encourage you to do is whatever you kind of written down as individuals is if you all agree on these things as being acceptable expectations within your group is to actually apply these things in your work through this activity that we're going to do today. So for example, if you said something that's productive is paraphrasing, then doggone it, somebody better paraphrase in your work today, right? If you said humor is important, then make sure that's in there too at some point. Okay, what we're going to do is I'm going to assign you a few pages in that reading, and it's going to be up to you how your group wants to tackle those pages, whether you're going to all read all of them or if you're going to divide and conquer. And then as you're reading, you're going to kind of fill in this back side of the green sheet with your own thoughts. And then you're going to come back as a group and kind of share your collective learnings together. So you're going to have that chance to collaborate as you're discussing these strategies for creating a safe environment from reading. So maybe what you wrote down for your expectations for productive or counterproductive things might not all perfectly apply to today's activity, but I'm sure some of them do. So find a chance to use those. So looks like most of you have kind of grabbed onto that thick packet of the book, which is not light but fire. Easy for me to say. And it's a book about how to lead meaningful race conversations in the classroom, which I know is not specific to math. However, you can imagine that if you're going to have these conversations, you want to be in a safe environment. And so I found it very interesting as I was reading this book, just how much the first chapter was perfect for us to discuss creating that safe environment. And as I was reading, I kept getting more and more excited, and I thought, I have to share this with the most awesome group of math teachers I know, which obviously is in this room right now. So I don't want us to read through everything today. We're going to kind of cut it in half. We'll do the other half next time. Our goal for today is to get through page 25, which I believe ends at house talk, which actually continues on to next time. So, it's up to you. You get to decide as a group. Are you all going to read everything? Are you going to kind of split it up? Doesn't matter to me. Whatever is best for your group. But I want you to kind of fill in that reading guide, the reflection guide on the back side of the green sheet with the columns as you're doing that. And not just read, but think about your reading and how it might apply to you. And then think about what are some barriers to doing some of these things in your classroom. And then not just think about the barriers, but what are some possible solutions to those barriers. I think it's important that groups not only talk about ideas, but talk about barriers to ideas. Instead of just making the elephant in the room, like say, if I said you should all be paraphrasing and you should all do it because it always works, and then just ignore the fact that maybe sometimes it doesn't work, then that's not really creating a safe environment. I can be honest with you and say, there might be times you don't need to paraphrase. You just need to be blunt with a person and move forward, like in an emergency situation. You might not have time to paraphrase. So what you're saying is so-and-so is in danger right now, right? You just need to act, right? So, exactly. So, I think it's important to share with your students, too, that there might be barriers to these ideas, but then to talk about what are some solutions, possible solutions to those barriers. There's some great ideas in this book. Maybe you feel like there might be barriers in your setting to actually following through with these things, and that's okay. So what are those things, and how might you attack them? It's kind of the idea of, I don't think people appreciate the person that only brings the reason why you can't do something to a group, but we all appreciate the person that provides the solutions to these things, or possible solutions, or at least tries to think of ideas. So it's kind of going along those lines there. What I'm thinking is it's 2:15 right now. Let's try to meet back in. You can go anywhere you want to do this. You don't have to stay in the room if you want to get out for a few minutes. But let's get back in here around 2:30. Is that okay? 2:30, and then we'll kind of start to go back into the survey and the implementation guide and try to start wrapping things up from there. And we'll pick this up next time we meet in February. So I know the topic of this book is obviously for race conversations in the classroom, but hopefully you can see how this applies to just a general classroom altogether. Has anybody found value so far in reading what you've read so far? Is there value to that? So what I'm curious about, what I'd love to gauge is what is your level of interest in digging in deeper into this book? Like, is it I know you've just barely scratched the surface, but is this something that you are right now intrigued by or not? And if so, then I have a plan moving forward with that. If not, then I have a different plan moving forward with that. But how many of you so far are like, I might want to read a little bit more into this? Just show of hands. Some of you are like, maybe I want to go a little bit deeper into this. Okay. Reason being, if it's really something that you guys are like, this is good stuff, then I could maybe see about getting you the actual book. But I don't want to tell anybody outside this room that. Okay? But if that's something that you guys would be like, dude, Gerry, I want to get this book to everyone in here, then I will look into it. But I need to know if it's worth doing that before I secretly spend that money. Okay? So just kind of let me know as you're on your way out. If it's something you're like, yeah, definitely, then let me know that. So I want to move forward to make sure I get you guys out on time. We will, next time, it's just going to be this book. We're going to dig into the rest of that, so you'll have plenty of time to digest and discuss. But I need us to move forward into the survey next. And this, again, is linked through the presentation in the Google Classroom. And the address is down here. It's bit.ly/MichME D3, capital D, for day 3. So we have 3 things we need to finish up with. The survey, then we're going to move into the implementation guide, and then just a quick reflection, and we're done. Has everybody signed the sign-in sheet, by the way? when you are done with the survey, which I still have that frozen on this screen over here where I'm dancing to. So if you still need that address, it's right there. But if you're done with that, then moving into the implementation guide, which is the slides for that are on the screens in the back there. You can move into your implementation guide, looking at day 3. Basically reviewing your commitment and stating your intention are the 2 big things I believe in your implementation guide for today. Just quietly reflect on this last piece here, specifically in yellow. What values and beliefs might you need to hold of yourself and of your community of learners to transfer anything you've gleaned from today back to your school or classroom? And then just the last thing I would add is on this sign-in sheet, if you're one of those people that is like, dude, Gerry, we need to get this book, would you just put like an asterisk next to your name in this column here on the left? And I'll set this by the back door. Otherwise, once you've got your survey done and your implementation guide is complete, then that's all I have for today. And I just say drive safe, and I'll see you next time.